Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
It's not about the shoes. It's about knowing where you're going.
Looks like we've got some big shoes to fill today.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money. The WorryFree Retirement. Your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist, 5-time author, and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Welcome to the Worry-Free Retirement, and I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, we are continuing an even deeper dive into our pyramid of misdirection. The second tactic today we're going to cover, used by the financial world to get our money, and most importantly, to keep it and hang on to it. And that is ironically making us believe, here it is, that the secret to success is having more money by creating in our mind's eye that our own financial scoreboard is the only means of tracking how successful we are in retirement. So regardless of whether you have $100,000 or $100 million, you're going to learn that success is not measured by the size of your shoe, but rather what's inside it. Now to do so, we're going to feature two of the most successful people in basketball sports history, one a coach and the other a player. We will learn how their hard work and their take on life will translate into our money and how we can feel more successful with it. We're going to discover what made two of the most successful sports figures in my lifetime, how all of this is going to promise you that you're going to enjoy your money through a proper plan to use and enjoy it. You know, in sports success, it's usually measured by winning and losing, and the system used to measure these wins and losses is something controlled by what's called a scoreboard. Now in basketball, like many sports, we have an electronic scoreboard. It's used to keep track of who's winning and who's losing. Now the problem is that this scoreboard can actually serve as a source of misdirection. Now why is this? Well, let me give you an example of my own personal example of me as a coach, coaching my son's AAU team years ago down in Memphis, of watching the scoreboard too closely. In fact, in this particular game, which we lost by over 40 points. Okay, bear with me on this. This is the first time we played a team. This team was out of Arkansas, okay? Really good team. Well, what happened was they started out of the gate doing very, very well, fast breaking on us, which was not our game plan. We weren't a fast break team, and I tried to hang with them, and we lost. So what the financial scoreboard tells us is we're losing. This was the real scoreboard of life. We came back. I changed the game plan back to what we do, which is slowing it down, shooting threes, and taking advantage of the opponents. We won, or almost won, excuse me. Basically, we won. Okay, we lost, but we won. Why do I say that? Because like Wooden, the success was we did the best with what we could. We came back and almost beat a team who earlier in the weekend beat us by 40 points. So although the scoreboard said we lost, in my view, we won. So money is really no different. The problem with money, as I see it, is the financial world wants to compare how we're doing to others. They want to take our 401k statement and they're going to take our house, they're going to take our cars, whatever we've got, and the idea is we're supposed to keep score with all of this money. It's kind of strange. Now lately, we've been talking a lot around here about pyramids, and today we will make the connection between pyramids, sports, and your money. And since we're talking about basketball, let's start with legendary basketball coach, the creator of the Pyramid of Success, John Wooden. Now, the John Wooden we know originally hailed from Hall, Indiana, but actually Wooden's first coaching gig was in Kentucky, a small town by the name of Dayton. This was in 1932, by the way. Ironically, the same year my granddad climbed on the telephone poles of Bell South, John Wooden started his coaching career. Now, the Dayton Green Devils lost 11 of their first 17 games that first year. Wooden would go on to say it was a very discouraging season, And here's the key from all of these experiences of Wooden. He said, I've learned what not to do. And as a result of learning what not to do, losing all those games, in his second career at Dayton, Kentucky, he turned it around and he won 15 games with only 3 losses. Now you fast forward to his many championships at UCLA, we find out that Wooden was determined that success, although he won all of these games, was still not determined by the scoreboard. And with that recognition and that wisdom, as we might like to say, of coaching these many, many games, he created again something we call the pyramid of success. Now what's interesting about all of these attributes of Wooden's pyramid of success, none of them mentions the term winning. Think about that. How could one of the winningest basketball coaches of all time not emphasize winning as a measure of success? Well, when we return, I'm going to show you how the financial world is diverting your attention away from a successful retirement by focusing your attention on their financial scoreboard, and why more money has nothing to do with your financial success. Stay tuned. I'm Tony Walker. I'll be right back.
And now it's time for the adventures of Stella and Scout. You've been watching the adventures of Stella and Scout.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for recently moved or been acquired or closed its doors forever? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k to safer territory. Why continue to risk your hard-earned money when you don't have to? Let's meet in person today to discuss your retirement options. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your no-obligation appointment to meet with me in person. Do it today.
And now it's time for Tony in the Trenches.
Our Tony in the Trenches comes from a young lady that I met recently, and I'll just kind of paraphrase her question. Tony, I recently inherited some money from my sister and am realizing how important it is to keep up with correct beneficiaries. My question is, how do I know which assets go straight to me and which assets are going to go through probate? So basically, there's 4 types of ways that you can own property. This is going to take a minute to answer this question, but I think this is really, really crucial when you're doing retirement planning. The first type of asset that we have is what's called solely owned. An example of this would be I run out and buy a car, and I'm in a hurry, and my wife's not available, and they say, hey, sir, we've got to set this thing up, and whose name do we put this in? The title. Well, I just throw it in my name, okay? That would be an example of a solely owned asset. Another common way to own property is joint, usually with survivorship. If you're married, for instance, you probably have your house. The deed to your house has you and your spouse listed with survivorship. Then you have assets that are trust or a contract, or it could even be in an LLC. For instance, the building at Tony Walker Financial, both the Bowling Green and the Louisville offices that I own, those are actually owned by an LLC, limited liability company, okay? And then finally, this is the biggie, beneficiary. Beneficiary. So what types of assets pass by beneficiary? Well, TSPs, 401ks, IRAs, pensions, 403B plans, and of course, life insurance, all pass by beneficiary. Now here's the thing. We're going to use this example. If you looked at all 4 of these assets, okay, you have the will here, so you've run to an attorney to have your will done, who's going to get everything when you die. And let's say you're still married, so you've got your spouse here. And in my case, I have 3 adult children. So there's the 3 children down here. So we kind of got a little bit of a pop quiz. What assets of these 4 actually go through the will? Which obviously anytime you see the will, that's where we're talking about probate, all right? Well, much to people's surprise, the only asset that goes through the will is an asset that is solely owned. All right? An asset that is jointly held, let's assume that the spouse was on there, goes directly to the spouse. Trust or contract would go, in this example, to the spouse. And here's a biggie, beneficiaries would go to the spouse. Now, in this lady's case, it was her sister. So as long as she was named as the beneficiary, this young lady, she'll get the assets. Here's what happens, though. This is an actual situation that has happened, and I've seen this play out. Let's say someone goes through a divorce. So the husband wants to write the wife out of it. They've got everything done and says, well, I tell you what, I'm going to draft a whole new will, and when I die, I'm going to leave all the stuff to the kids. Let's say this person has 3 children. So this person does that. He goes to his attorney, writes out his ex-spouse, and he's kind of laughing all the way to the bank, right? And he says, yeah, now if something happens to me, the kids will get it. But what if that husband forgot to change the beneficiary of his 401k? Let's say it was previously his spouse. He now has an ex-spouse, but he forgot to change that. What happens? Well, since the beneficiary is still the ex-spouse, even though he intended for all that money to go to his children, guess who gets it? The ex-spouse. Which leads me to my next point, folks. If you don't have an updated estate plan, if you're not sure how to list beneficiaries, if you don't understand the difference between primary and contingent, contact us immediately, folks. We are experts in this area. And while we're not attorneys, we work in planning all the time. And of course, we can bring in the legal advice to help us along the way. So do it now. If you have an outdated estate plan, you don't have a will, you don't know anything about beneficiaries, you're worried about who's going to get all your stuff when you die and you want it to go to the right people, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Let's get started now on getting that plan updated. All right. I came up with something. Everybody else has got their keys to success. What I took the liberty of doing is I came up with our own kind of little pyramid of success, not as rambunctious and thorough as Mr. John Wooden's, but it's pretty good. These are 5 keys to a successful retirement that I've learned over time. The first one is, just like basketball, you need an experienced coach. Now let's look at this a minute. You're out here getting ready to retire. There's no do-overs, folks. Let's say you're approaching retirement and you're going to roll this 401k over to somebody. Maybe you've been to a dinner seminar, I don't know, but you're sitting here, you're getting ready to turn over your life's work to somebody you don't even know. Somebody in many cases that doesn't have the experience we do. So the question is, would you rather work with somebody who's done over 4,000 written game plans, who's worked with over 10,000 people over the years, who has over 2,000 clients, that's me, or are you going to just leave it to chance and throw your money at somebody else? I think an experienced coach is the way to go. Number 2, the other key to successful retirement is know thyself. You know, many people, I think, get frustrated. I have some friends that are stockbrokers. They say, Tony, you're always getting on the stock market. I'm not getting on the stock market, folks. We have some money in the stock market, but remember, we are working with what I call the saver personality. You got to know if you're a saver. This show is dedicated to savers. It's not meant for investors and speculators. We're not being critical of the stock market. We're just saying savers shouldn't have much money in the stock market because we know they're going to worry about it. So know thyself. Number 3, make the most of what you got. That's all John Wooden is saying. The key to success is do the best you can with what you've got. Keep your fees down. Keep your costs down. Make sure you have plenty of mailbox money. We can help you with this, and we can make sure that you're maximizing your retirement. Number 4, I love this one. Forget their scoreboard. Folks, just because you've got a bunch of money in the 401k, that doesn't mean you're going to have a successful retirement. A 401k is a savings plan. It is not a retirement strategy. This is what we do. This is all we do. And many people out there who are financial advisors, again, they're trying to give you advice based on the first half of life. We're talking about halftime and beyond. It's a whole different ballgame, folks, when you get in retirement. And again, this is not a one-shot deal. You need someone that's going to help you monitor the progress based on what you want, not what somebody else tells you you should want. And finally, I love this one. It's not about the shoes. Let's play that quote again from Michael Jordan.
It's not about the shoes. It's about knowing where you're going.
That's right, folks. It's about where do you want to go. You don't have to have $1 million to have a worry-free retirement, but you have to know where you're going, and you've got to have an experienced coach, a retirement planning specialist that has been there before and can direct your steps along the way. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to come back. It's an interesting case study I'm going to go through. We're talking a lot about beneficiaries and IRAs. Do you realize that there is something called a tax tumor buried within your retirement account? And that thing ain't going away, folks. In fact, it could get worse the older you get, and it gets worse when you try to leave it to loved ones. Stay tuned. Some good stuff coming up. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Can you afford for your money to take a hit with the stock market being so volatile these days? Nobody can time the market, but having a retirement game plan with Tony Walker Financial gives you peace of mind and sleep insurance. Learn how to prevent losses in your retirement accounts and plan your retirement around an income you can never outlive. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com today to schedule a personal meeting with Tony to secure your hard-earned money. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
And be as independent as you can, but don't be reluctant to ask for help.
That was a centenarian, someone who's turned the age of 100, and this person sums up life this way: don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Well, that's all well and good, but how do you know when you need help, especially if you don't know you've got a problem? Problem is, if you've got an IRA, 401k, lump sum pension, 403b, a regular IRA. There's this financial scoreboard out there, and the problem is buried within your retirement account is something called a tax tumor. And unfortunately, the longer you live, sometimes the worse this tax tumor gets, and when you die, it gets passed off to the next generation. So ironically, what we're going to do is go back to the original board. If you're just now joining us, we just covered this in the Tony in the Trenches. I'm going to erase a few of these things and use an example of what happens with an IRA when you pass away, okay? So all we're going to do here, we're going to focus on the beneficiary ownership, all right? And we're assuming you've got an IRA. This could be a $300,000 401k that's been rolled into an IRA. It could be a current IRA. And what we want to know is what happens at death. And in this example, we're going to assume that the owner of this IRA or 401k is 65 and still has a spouse. Let's take off the X. still is happily married. But at age 65, and we'll say that $300,000 is in this IRA. And remember, it does not go through the will. It's going to pass by beneficiary. So in this case, we'll say that he had the spouse as the beneficiary and did not elect a contingent beneficiary. So he passes away, and you say, well, is there any taxes? There's a tax tumor, Tony. Doesn't the IRS own some of this? That's true, but since he's leaving this to a spouse, and since both of them are under the age of 70, it would just simply be transferred over. We do this all the time. In fact, folks, our office is a full-service retirement planning firm. We have a lot of staff, and when our clients pass away, which they do, we handle all of the paperwork to get it all transferred. We do everything at absolutely no cost. I mean, it's a great service. But anyway, the spouse then would just inherit the IRA. Because it's a spouse, she is not required to take any minimum distributions until she turns 70 and a half. But what if they didn't have contingent beneficiaries and they're killed in a common accident? Who would get this money? Well, that's a problem. Now it does go through probate and the courts decide. So we want to make sure that we have the 3 children listed as contingent beneficiaries. Now you're saying, well, Tony, why are you going through all this? Where are we going with this? Well, let's say that husband and wife die prior to 70 and a half. They both pass away. So let's say they've listed their beneficiaries, and let's say they want to leave a third to each child. So they pass away. The 3 children would get this. Oh, by the way, if you lose a spouse, make sure you update your beneficiaries when you inherit the IRA. A lot of people forget to do this. This is a big, big no-no. So let's say that he's passed away, she gets it, she updates the 3 children to primary beneficiaries, so now she passes away and they get a third each. What happens? Well, now the rules get a little goofy. The government, even though these children aren't even close to 70 and a half, even though the parents weren't even 70 and a half, they are going to have to now take RMDs, all right, or they have to pay taxes now. Okay, this is where, as I say, folks, if you're just now joining us, we love the 401k plans as a savings tool. That's a wonderful plan to have for what I call the first half of life, the accumulation of money on a pre-tax basis. What Wally World doesn't tell you is one day there is a day of reckoning. This huge tax tumor, that's the amount of money that the government owns on your 401k. I call it a lien. It would be the same thing if you had a house, right? And you thought it was worth $300,000. You got plenty of money in the house, but you owe the bank $150,000. Well, your equity or your value is only $150,000. The bank owns the other $150,000. So what a lot of times the financial world loves to do this. They keep talking about how much you've got in your 401k, and you need more and more money and more money. And they might even bring up taxes. They might use that as a reason to have more money. Because you'll have more taxes, you need even more money. And I'd say, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. So we have more and more money so we can have more and more taxes. This makes no sense. So you say, well, Tony, how do we deal with this? We deal with it before you die. Folks, you don't wait till you die. You don't wait to start passing off money to deal with a tax tumor. You deal with the tax tumor now. This is what a retirement planning specialist does, folks. We have to be proactive. And while many people are good at working in the first half of your life, helping you accumulate money, I'd say this is a whole nother ballgame now. If you're nearing retirement, you're at what we call halftime. At halftime is where you basically stop looking at the scoreboard, you go in the locker room. You may even have to get a new coach, folks. The same coach may not understand what's coming because what's coming is true retirement. That's called the second half of life. And boy, you better have a retirement planning specialist on board then because there's going to be a lot of things come up in the second half, a lot of changes, and that's where we at Tony Walker Financial really shine. So if you're retired or retiring soon, if you feel like nobody's really on your bench, you're out there going it alone, or maybe your advisor really doesn't understand the second half of life, let's talk. All you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and we can set up a no obligation time either by phone or in person to meet with me. Put my 35 years in the financial trenches to work for you. Let's see if we can create a game plan that makes sense for you, your family, and your money. Well, incidentally, speaking about working hard and saving hard, does the Bible have anything to say about working hard? And believe it or not, we're going to define the secret to success, and it's not what you think. Great words of wisdom coming up from both a great legendary coach and God himself. You're watching the WorryFree Retirement. I'll be right back. I got to get me a cup of coffee. Are you retired or retiring soon? With the stock market at an all-time high, do you really think it's wise to risk your 401k plan? Well, I'm retirement specialist Tony Walker, inviting you to my next free workshop, Safeguarding Your 401k from the Next Stock Market Crash, Tuesday, August 13th at 6 p.m. in Georgetown, Kentucky. Learn the secret to a worry-free retirement by attending. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Then I ran across a simple verse that said, "At God's footstool to confess, a poor soul knelt and bowed his head. I failed," he cried. The Master said, "Thou didst thy best." That is success.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement with the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
You know, in real life, all the greats had one thing in common. They were all hard workers. Whether it was Coach Wooden or Michael Jordan, they all knew that success depended on hard work. You know who the hardest worker, though, of them all was and still is today? God. In fact, God's economy is based on hard work, and we see this in Genesis 2:2. The Bible describes how God worked hard by creating the earth in just 6 days. Ironically, it was on the seventh day that while he rested, God took the time to create man. His name was Adam. So Adam, who did none of the work, enters this beautiful world created by God. The only thing required of Adam is found in verse 15, whereby it says God instructs Adam to cultivate the land. Now it's interesting that the Bible didn't say Adam had to work, but to cultivate, which simply means Adam had to take care of the land, which is not the same as working hard and plowing the land like we do today. Of course, we know the rest of the story. Adam got misdirected by the devil and took his eye off the cultivation scoreboard. The result? You and I now have to work our tails off. It's interesting to see the difference between working hard and resting. In fact, the Bible even talks about this in the New Testament in Hebrews 4:10. It says, "For the one who has entered his rest," that's God's rest, "has himself also rested from his works, as God from his." In other words, there we are, just like Adam before the fall. Hebrews says that God worked again, and we have entered his rest. Now, what is this verse saying? It's saying that God, through Christ, has now given believers a way to rest from the world, not by our efforts and hard work, but rather by the sacrificial death of Christ. So just like Adam, we must be on guard for this type of thing because the world will try to misdirect us from this rest. Adam didn't enter the rest on his own. God placed him there. We don't enter on our own or work to get there. God places us there. Just read Romans. It describes this in detail. So here we are. We're trying not to be misdirected or duped. And the world out there says, we've got our own playbook and we're going to try to do that. So as successful as we want to be, true success is being in harmony with God. And to me, that's the definition of success. We conclude with this Colossians 3:2. It's important because you say, okay, Tony, what is the scoreboard there? What's the spiritual scoreboard? How am I supposed to keep my eyes on God? Well, Colossians 3:2 sums it up this way. Set your mind, I would say your focus, not on the things that are on earth, but of the things of heaven. You know, folks, we can take our eyes off any scoreboard really quickly and start looking at somebody else's scoreboard. Today's show has been about winners and losers, and nobody wants to feel like a loser, and the financial world knows this. But my job is to make you feel like a winner. So regardless of the amount of money you've got stockpiled in your retirement account, my mission, irregardless of that amount, is to help savers worry less about money by providing one-on-one attention and one-on-one service to help you use and enjoy your money. So what about you? Are you sitting there saying, well, Tony, I don't know if I have anybody in my corner that's trying to think more of me than they are my money. Why don't you give us an opportunity to help you? It's easy to do. You can call us, or just as easy, you can just go online to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Now, when you get there, you can either type in your question or what you're looking for, or if you just want to say, I want to talk to you right away, Tony, just click on that Let's Get Started button. All of your information is sent to us confidentially. We do not sell or give away your information to anyone. You will be contacted and we will set up either a phone appointment, or if it warrants, I will meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or our newest offices in Lexington, Kentucky. So take advantage of this free opportunity to meet to see how our game plan can help you be on the road to a worry-free retirement. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's program. Next week, we'll be talking about our third tactic of the misdirection that comes your way from the financial world, more magic. Going to be really good stuff. In the meantime, though, between now and next week, if all else fails, you remember to be worry-free. Make it a good one.